Recently, an Andrew Klavan short video appeared in my YouTube feed. In it, he uses part of a Dave Chapelle routine to justify the statement, "We're beggars in our own culture." And by we, he means conservatives. The Dave Chapelle routine was part of his little transphobic series about declaring himself a TERF. And he says, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. I don't know, a quote from Kindergarten Cop maybe, and that this is a thing every 4-year-old knows. Klavan then doubles down on the beggars in our own culture idea by saying, we go to a James Bond movie and we're just so grateful that he's not a lesbian. Now, conservatives do this sort of thing all the time. They pick a fact that's concurrent with the thing being argued and then defend the fact as though that's the thing being criticized. But nobody who has an issue with the James Bond character takes issue with his heterosexuality. They care about the fact that he's a misogynist. And people who have issues with Dave Chapelle aren't concerned that he has a 4-year-old's understanding of gender. They're concerned that he uses that infantile point of view to justify his turfdom. Now, I don't really believe that Dave Chapelle is a TERF because I don't really believe that Dave Chapelle is a radical feminist. But really, what's wrong with having a 4-year-old's point of view of gender? And I would say nothing if you're 4 years old. But if you're an adult and you're using it as a justification for disenfranchising certain groups, then it's kind of a big problem. There are two realities that I don't think conservatives, transphobic conservatives, ever consider. The first is that binary genders only represent the two ends of a spectrum. There are, because of environmental and genetic factors, a small plurality of people born with secondary and in some cases primary sex characteristics of both genders. The simple fact that this group of people exists invalidates any argument based on the exclusivity of sexual dimorphism offered up by Klavan or Chapelle or Shapiro or Prager for that matter. You know, any argument based on the gender understanding of a 4-year-old. And the second thing that they don't ever want to bring up is that nature doesn't care. You know, we might, if we were going to attribute intent to nature, suggest that it cares about the survival of the species. But when it comes to the individual, it's just rolling the dice. You know, it doesn't care whether the individual in a species survives and procreates or not. And it doesn't care how hard a life it has. You know, roll the dice. Tay-Sachs, sorry, roll the dice. Diabetes, tough break. You know, roll the dice. Sickle cell anemia, sorry. You know, if we understand these two simple ideas, that nature doesn't care and that gender exists on a continuum, then why is it so hard to accept the notion that a person might be born biologically male but cognitively wired to think of themselves as female, or the other way around? You know, nature doesn't care. We care. We do. We have handicapped parking, drug regimens, surgical interventions, prosthetic devices to overcome the consequences of nature's cruel indifference. It's certainly wiring a male to feel like they should be female or a female to feel like they should be male wouldn't be the strangest condition ever inflicted upon Homo sapiens. And if it's natural, why should we judge trans people any differently than we do a person with high blood pressure or freckles? And Why should we judge their attempts to compensate for their discontinuity, either cosmetically or through pharmaceuticals or surgery, or just by the way that they modify their social interactions with their fellow human beings? Why should we judge them any differently than we do someone who gets LASIK or walks with a cane? Scottish philosopher David Hume said, "You can't derive moral precepts from facts about reality. You can't get an ought from an is." But it's a very popular pastime, again among conservatives, to deny an inconvenient fact when their judgment against a thing is based upon their pronouncement of it as unnatural. I said before that nature doesn't care, people do. But if you reject a person's natural condition and attribute it instead to a defect of character, then you give yourself permission not to care. And if I'm forced to judge one group or another as having a defective character, it's not going to be the person who sees themselves as different. It's going to be the person who uses that difference as a justification to attack and exclude. I'm looking at you, Mr. Klavan, and you, Dave Chapelle, and any of the other conservatives who want to think that way. I'm Kevin, and these are my sinister thoughts.